I don't tell people you're okay the way that you are. That's not the right story. The right story is you're way less than you could be. It's all very well to think the meaning of life is happiness, but what happens when you're unhappy? Happiness is a great side effect when it comes. Accept it gratefully, but it's fleeting and unpredictable. That the soul of the individual eternally hungers for the heroism of genuine being, and that the willingness to take on that responsibility is identical to the decision to live a meaningful life. When you explore boldly, when you voluntarily confront the unknown, you gather information and build your renewed self out of that information. The fundamental moral question is not how to shelter children completely from misadventure and failure, so they never experience any fear or pain, but how to maximize their learning so that useful knowledge may be gained with minimal cost. I can live with no responsibility whatsoever, but the price I pay is that nothing matters, or I can reverse it and everything matters. But I have to take the responsibility that is associated with that. The poor and stressed always die first, and in greater numbers. They are also much more susceptible to non-infectious diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. In the West, we have been withdrawing from our tradition, religion, and even nation-centered cultures, partly to decrease the danger of group conflict. But we are increasingly falling prey to the desperation of meaninglessness, and that is no improvement at all. Random wandering will not move you forward. It will instead disappoint and frustrate you, and make you anxious and unhappy, and hard to get along with, and then resentful, and then vengeful, and then worse. I don't think that you have any insight whatsoever into your capacity for good until you have some well-developed insight into your capacity for evil. Confront the chaos of being, take aim against a sea of troubles, specify your destination, and chart your course, admit to what you want. Tell those around you who you are. Narrow and gaze attentively and move forward forthrightly. Be precise in your speech. If you can't understand why someone is doing something, look at the consequences of their actions, whatever they might be, and then infer the motivations from their consequences. When you decide to learn about your faults so that they can be rectified, you open a line of communication with the source of all revelatory thought. You must determine where you are going, so that you can bargain for yourself, so that you don't end up resentful, vengeful, and cruel. It's appropriate and praiseworthy to associate with people whose lives would be improved if they saw your life improve. If you can't understand why someone is doing something, look at the consequences of their actions, whatever they might be, and then infer the motivations from their consequences. Life is very difficult. One of the most ancient of religious ideas that emerges everywhere, I would say, is that life is essentially suffering. You should be humble enough to understand that if you can't order your own life, You shouldn't be trying to order anything more complicated than that. If you're talking to a man who wouldn't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone for whom you have absolutely no respect. Ideologies are substitutes for true knowledge, and ideologues are always dangerous when they come to power, because a simple-minded I-know-it-all approach is no match for the complexity of existence. You preachers of equality, the tyrant mania of impotence clamors, thus out of you for equality, your most secret ambitions to be tyrants, thus shroud themselves in words of virtue. If you can't find a good companion to walk with, walk alone. Like an elephant roaming the jungle, it is better to be alone and to be with those who will hinder your progress. Our behavioral patterns are exceedingly complex, and psychology is a young science. The scope of our behavioral wisdom exceeds the breadth of our explicit interpretation. We act, even instruct, and yet do not understand. How can we do what we cannot explain? The more you open yourself up to the possibility that good things will happen, the higher probability is that good things will in fact happen. It's appropriate and praiseworthy to associate with people whose lives would be improved if they saw your life improve. If you can't understand why someone is doing something, look at the consequences of their actions, whatever they might be, and then infer the motivations from their consequences. You cannot be protected from the things that frighten you and hurt you, but if you identify with the part of your being that is responsible for transformation, then you are always the equal, or more than the equal, of the things that frighten you. Can you imagine yourself in 10 years if, instead of avoiding the things you know you should do, you act to them every single day? That's powerful. I knew this guy. He'd been in a motorcycle accident, and it really ruined him, and he was a linesman working on the power. If you stand still, you fall backwards. You cannot stand still, because the world moves away from you if you stand still, and there is no stasis. There is only backwards. Strengthen the individual. Start with yourself. Take care of yourself. Define who you are. Refine your personality. You have to articulate your own principles so that you can defend yourself against others taking inappropriate advantage of you, and so that you are secure and safe while you work and play. The fact that power plays a role in human motivation does not mean that it plays the only role or even the primary role. Beware of single cause interpretations, and beware the people who purvey them. If you will not reveal yourself to others, you cannot reveal yourself to yourself. That does not only mean that you suppress who you are, although it also means that. It means that so much of what you could be will never be forced by necessity to come forward.